A very good afternoon to everybody. Again, welcome to this webinar, which is titled Introduction to Digital Transformation. I really thank you for your time in spending this afternoon here with us. Right, as you can see on your left-hand side, you should have the chat function. Should you have any questions, do be ready to post them on the chat. I'll be happy to take questions either during the progress of the presentation or at the end of the Q&A session itself. Right, since it's 3:01 at the moment, I suggest we shall start with the so-called presentation itself. I hope everybody can see the screen that's on. Let me know if you can see that, please. Great. Let's start the presentation. So, just a quick note, the session here for today is actually recorded. So not to worry, if you miss the session, we will definitely post it so on YouTube as well, so you can actually re-watch it again. And we will also be sending out a quick handout of the deck if you're interested. We have your email address, so watch out for the email that we will send after the so-called session itself. Again, the question can be asked on the chat. Do send your question in. I will be happy to answer them either during the presentation or at the end. And also, we will probably need you to quickly rate the webinar at the end of the session as well. Next, here is the agenda for today. So for today, I would like to take the topic of digital transformation and give it a bit of a definition and talk a little bit more about it, and specifically to say why do we need to do digital transformation and why now. So that's something that we would like to actually discuss that with the audience here today. And more importantly, I would like to share this thing called the IT capability maturity framework, which is something that we use to actually look at how we can actually do digital transformation the right way. Okay, and we will also be sharing with you what does that mean as it mature, how also get started as well. So that's the gist of today. We will talk about digital transformation and introducing the framework, which is IT-CMF itself. Right. So quickly, let's get on to it. So what is digital transformation? So if we look at the definition by IDC itself, so it says here on the screen, it says it defines digital transformation, or DX for that matter, as applying a new technology to radically change the process, the customer experience, and value. So these are the three things that are very critical when we do a digital transformation to really look at how we actually change the process that we have within the organization, and also the customer experience itself when the customer actually engage with us with our also services, the way we deliver a product per se, and more importantly, what the customer sees or get at the end of the day, which is an outcome of the value itself, right? So that is actually the very key definition from IDC itself that we need to actually look at. Next, let's look at a little bit more what is actually driving digital transformation. So I want to introduce a quick little concept here called the social media analytical cloud and internet of things, which we call SMACIT. Okay, so what is it? What is it all about? So if you look at it, right, if the things around us today, a lot of stuff actually is driven the digital transformation actually due to things like the social side of things. So if you look at the old days, right, we have things like Facebook. Now it's actually even evolved to things like TikTok, from YouTube to TikTok, to what we call different things like Twitter, Slacks, and all that, right? So the social part of it is actually driving a lot of that behavior change for us as an individual, especially in this digital era. Now, also don't forget with the proliferation of mobile devices, that is also putting us to be closer to the digital side of things, because everything is on your palm of your hand, is actually easily reachable. It is actually there for you to reach, to connect, and to actually access on demand, all those stuff. Right. The analytical stuff of it, now, as we use a lot of digital solution, we generate a lot of data. So a lot of companies now are actually looking at things like how do we harvest or harness the data that has been generated by the huge amount of activities that we do digitally. So that's also another area when we look at digital. The analytical part of it is actually absolutely key. Now, I don't know about you, but in some a few parts of my home, I've actually connected with a couple of Internet of Things devices like the Google Home Mini, stuff like that, which actually helps me to play music or to keep track of my schedule, or even the Chromecast, whereby I can actually make my dumb TV into a slightly smarter TV, which I can use to cast videos, stream songs, and whatnot. So the SMACIT, SMACIT, is actually something that we need to be conscious of that is driving the digital transformation of today, right? So as these things actually continue to evolve, this is also one of the reasons why we should look at what we call the digital transformation itself, because all these things are all surrounding us at this point in time. Now, as we have more and more these kind of things, so the question will come to us as IT, or if you look at it from a business point of view, right? How are we going to handle this, right? There's going to be either we're going to so-called fall behind, whereby the risk of being failure, as in not going to be connecting to the digital era, or you're going to say, hey, I'm going to make an effort to see how can I actually close the gap and actually doing it. Because at the end of the day, right, if you are not doing digital transformation today, your competitor is going to do it. As simple as that, right? So you cannot just sit on the bench anymore to say that no, we'll let somebody go ahead and do it first. But eventually, we will still have to get into the water itself and actually really start something of the sort. So this is where a lot of people have actually asked us to say that, hey, John, actually, how do we actually start this digital transformation? Are we even ready for digital transformation? And in that case, which are the areas that perhaps we can actually better prepare? So for today's webinar, we hope to be able to share some of those thought processes in terms of the framework that you can perhaps apply to look at to help you to apply or say at least think about starting the digital transformation itself, right? Now, what are the things that we need to be conscious of? Now, these are the trendings that we are seeing at this point in time, especially the ROSO. That means you shift from research on offline to shop offline. This is very typical of us in the old days, I believe, before the pre-COVID situation. A lot of time we actually browse through a physical shopping mall, a physical shop per se. We walk around to buy certain items, then we say, this is probably the best model, the best color that fits me, that I fancy. This is the best price. I will actually do it. Now, as the pandemic hit us, we have changed that behavior from research offline, shopping offline, straight away to something that is a little bit unique, which is research online and we shop online and we actually pay money online to get those goods and services to us. So that is actually really a big shift. So I'm sure all of us have actually experienced buying stuff from one of the online platform like Lazada of the world, Shopee of the world, or even Taobao itself, right? Now, not to mention things like ordering Grab food when you don't feel like actually going out to go and eat or to grab the food that you want, you actually order food from the platform, which I sometimes do as well, right? So the shifting is actually already happened, right? Now, the digital channel to market nowadays for a business, right? So it's no longer limited to things like the social media, like what we call Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and all that, right? It has actually shifted to even things like you can set up a digital shop like one of the shopping platforms to actually market your products and services per se. So even LinkedIn is actually allowing you to actually do that. So a lot of people have actually taken on the first step to actually migrate or move into this digital channel. Now, the understanding that the fact that a lot of consumer, even myself, we have this intention or inclination of wanting things to have on demand, as in if I need it now, I will order it, I will get it almost instantaneously, almost the same day, in that sense, or if not within a very short period of time when the delivery happens, right? Now, as we have the pandemic, which is the COVID-19, we have a war going on in some parts of the world. We have COVID, monkeypox, and all this disruption to the supply chain, right? we also become a little bit more creative as to where do we get our products and services. Do we order it overseas? Do we get it locally? What are the options available? So as a business, you need to be aware of all this trending that are actually affecting your ability to serve your customer. And your customers are also looking at from the other perspective to say that, hey, what can we do to actually change to get to the things that we want, right? Again, there's a lot of technology that has emerged in the last 5, 6 years. Things like going to the cloud, things like going to a virtual reality, which Facebook is trying to go to, things like blockchain or even automation. I think last month we actually did a webinar on how to get into automation. So those are the trends that are very, very trending at the moment, and a lot of organizations are also looking to that. Now, in the things that we do, we also need to look at the mobile apps per se. So a lot of people have a lot of apps. I've got multiple apps even for payment solution, right? You have Do It To You, you have Touch and Go, right? You have Boost and all these different kind of payment apps, right? But eventually we see the trending moving towards a mega apps or even more bigger apps or platforms per se. Even Shopee itself, they can actually allow you to actually pay money through the platform if you have an account or if you have actually monetary value stored in that sense. So these are the trends that we are seeing that are really, really driving the business to really rethink, right? It's actually forcing us to rethink the way that we do business in a digital era. Now, what we believe would be a good steps to build a successful digital business. These are the 6 things that we prescribe or we will recommend for you people to do. First, you must get into the right mindset that the whole organization, not just the C level or even the working level, must be aligned to have a mindset that we need to know what are we doing on digital. This is absolutely critical. The whole organization should be aligned to one thing and one thing only. What do we do in digital, right? Second of all, we need to actually put the right leaders in place to actually be the sponsor, to actually drive for a digital transformation. Now, don't just make it as a headline, as something that people just talk about and say, oh, we have a vision or a tagline, we're going to be the best of this, best of that. We need a digital leader in your organization to actually be that sponsor to drive it. Thirdly, we need to actually have what we call a center of excellence established within your organization. Now, you could start very small. You could start things like, hey, John, we're going to actually transform our manual process to a digital process. That will be a start. But you need to have that center of excellence where people can come together, where people can actually work together to learn, to adopt, to actually transform, to actually do that digital initiative. That will be very, very important for the organization to retain that knowledge within the organization itself. Now, number four, we also need to have a digital business strategy. So if we say that we're going to do digital, exactly what are we offering? Where are we trying to get to? What segment of customers are we trying to capture for today for our business? So that needs to be clear cut. There needs to be a roadmap of sort, right? And also number five, don't forget to upskill the people within the organization, right? There's so many topics out there, right? Like we mentioned just now, we talk about the cloud, we talk about blockchain, we talk about automation. Those are just some of the key basic stuff, right? Even security itself, right? So you need to make sure the people are equipped with the new knowledge, with the new skill sets to move the organization forward. So training is also very, very, very key, right? And also to look at, hey, if we're not doing this today and we need to do something digital, that could be something that we need to develop as an organization that we could be well known of to be something that we are very good at. So if we look at example like Grab, when Grab first started, they actually offer what? A very simple platform to actually serve our customers or us for that matter to say that there are private driver, private cars. Eventually they expand to taxis and then the premium category, right? And then they move on to things like Grab Food, right? Now, eventually, even this year, I think I discovered earlier that they actually do Grab delivery with something that's competing with the Post Laju of the world, the delivery guys of the world, because they felt that, hey, we could leverage that platform to do a little bit more of those stuff, kind of things, right? So be conscious of these are the steps that we are saying that if you want to be successful, we actually need to actually sit down and actually plan this out on what needs to happen next. Now, in summary, just want to quickly share with the audience here that there are what we call three building blocks. Okay, so as you can see on the diagram, the IT capability maturity framework is actually one of them that we would prescribe. The other one is actually the people skills, which is having the right technical skill itself to drive your organization to the next level from a digital perspective. Now, don't forget, you also need to take the approach of a service constellation approach. This is actually from ITIL, which talks about delivering value to your customer. So it's not just to say that, hey, I have a set of services, I have a digital product. So the question is this of value to your customer? If it is not, then you might want to rethink your strategy again. Because if it is not, your customers will go to your competitor, which delivers that value to them. So it's absolutely critical that you look at this holistically with these three building blocks to actually develop your digital business strategy and to actually work with your people in your organization to actually deliver that. Okay. So this is actually the reason why I recommend these three building blocks itself. Now, let's talk a little bit more intro into this IT-CMF thing. So in IT-CMF, the capability maturity framework, we talk about four different areas. So as you can see from the table that's on the screen, we actually need to look at how we run this um, in a digital way. So when we say we want to run a digital way, first and foremost, we need to run it IT like a business. Okay, this is absolutely a mindset change from the traditional to say that, oh, I'm going to be a cost center, whatever that business asks me to do, I will just provide that service, right? But if we switch it around, we actually have to work with the business to say that, hey, we need to manage IT like a business. Okay, so how do we do that? So we actually have to adopt business processes to run IT itself. So business processes will look at things like ROI, right? Return on investment. That is key. It's not to say, oh, I'm going to subscribe to this, I'm going to buy this, but where is the return of business to the company itself? So that needs to be relooked at. Second of all, we need to manage the IT budget. Okay. Now, a lot of people may say, hey, John, I'm already doing that. So what's the difference here? The difference here is we need to look at the investment that we make in IT. Is it really creating an impact to the business value? Not necessarily to the IT side, but it has to be to the business value. I normally give an example to say that, hey, assuming say we are committed or we have actually bound by a SLA of 99.9949. But the question is, if you have a downtime during business hour, is that a value to the business? So the answer obviously is not, right? Because if you have a, say, SAP finance module down on a month end, and specifically at 10 o'clock when your finance director wants to actually close the month end closing, that's probably not a good time to have a downtime now, despite the fact that you might say, hey, John, I've actually met my SLA. But that doesn't provide any value to the business in that sense. So that's something to seriously rethink to say that if we're going to run it by the business from an IT perspective, we really need to know what is the value that we are delivering to the business in that sense, right? Now, the next thing, we need to manage the IT capability. Now, in the IT-CMF framework, there are 34 of them, which I will show you in the next slides, also in the next future slides, to talk about what are they and where are the things that you need can actually perhaps further develop in that sense. And more importantly, the last one is actually managing IT for business value. So using the example that I just gave earlier, right? Showing a report that your SLA is green, your uptime is 99.99, perhaps doesn't really align back to the business value that the business have actually asked for. That's something that we need to reevaluate, realign back to what the business has asked us or tasked us to do in that sense, right? Now, again, this is just a quick summary. So on the right-hand side of the slide, you will see that is actually the framework itself is called IT Capability Maturity Framework. You can actually grab a copy off the internet or let us know. We can actually send you a copy to have a quick read. Now, inside there, if you look at the left-hand side of the table, they will talk about where the assessment maturity level should be. So initially, a lot of us will probably fall under the intermediate or advanced, but the aim is actually to slowly, progressively move towards the optimizing level, whereby we really provide a value-centric to the business itself. Okay, we will show you a little bit more of that in the next slide. By the way, before I move on, is there any question, anybody? Everybody okay? If there is, please let me know. I'll put it in the chat. I'll be happy to take them as well. Now, sorry, this slide here, there are 37 of them. Sorry, my apologies. It's supposed to be 37 critical capability. So for IT-CMF framework, they actually break it down to the various area of what we need to manage or to look at the digital transformation. How then that be of value to your organization? So if you look at it, the four pillars that were mentioned, right? Managing IT like a business. So there is a list of items in there, or should I say practices that we need to actually enhance. Same with managing the IT budget, managing the IT capability, or even managing IT for business value. How do we realign back what we are doing from the IT perspective and to what the business want? This individually, we would do a we can do a quick assessment to see whether which level are you, whether you are at the optimizing or at the intermediate or advanced or just starting off, to look at where you are. And if I may show you the next slide, it will show you a bit more details of that. So when we talk about critical quality, this is the individual element itself. This is actually what it means. So we will need to actually address that. So as we address the capability, we need to look at three key areas to help you to focus on delivering that transformation. So first thing first, we need to look at the areas of your infrastructure, whether it's on-prem or on cloud, or it could be hybrid, or it could be multi-cloud. We need to look at the technology. Is there any technical debt that exists in your company, in your current situation? Is there something that we need to do a changeover or we need to actually take note of? In terms of operation approach, we also need to look at how things are run. Is it running as per the best practices, or is there something that we can actually address the gaps in that sense? So there is a digital readiness assessment that we can do to come out with the final report. Now, let me just show you quickly what that would look like. So this is just a sample with all the 37 elements, and then we plot them out into a chart of sort whereby you can see where you are of which of the powers that we talk about. So some of them could be you are at level 2, some you are doing at level 4. Now, so if actually once we actually do the assessment and actually map this out, then we can actually sit down and actually plan to say that, okay, now, for this year, what do we want to improve on? Maybe move the needle from level 2 to level 3. Those at level 4, okay, maintain that. Those are the areas that we're doing well as an organization according to the IT-CMF framework. Let's not touch them. But those that are at a 2 or even 1, okay, let's look at how we can actually build some capability to improve that overall. So if you look at this assessment, this gives you a very clear indication of what are the areas that you as an organization or as a team is actually lacking that you can actually focus on. Again, do be mindful when you do this assessment. We will need to actually monitor it over a period of time. Say after 12 or 18 months, we should do a reassessment again to do a comparison to see have you made progress in those areas that you focus on. Again, this is not a 1 year plan. It's typically a 3 to 5 year plan to get your organization up to a desired level. And traditionally, not everybody will be at level 5, but if you're hovering between level 3 and 4, you're pretty much close to what we call the medium of all the other companies that are doing. Not everybody will be at 4. Not everybody needs to be at 4. So you need to relook at it to say that, John, does it make sense for me to go everything at 4? The answer is definitely no. But if it's at 2, maybe we need to actually strengthen or improve in those specific area itself, right? Now, once we've done this, what we need to do next is also to do what we call a kind of a transformation roadmap to help you and your organization to move up that maturity level. So this is just a sample of it, of what we can do after the assessment. Like I said, identifying those gaps that you may exist in your current organization or team. We can sit down and talk about it to say that, okay, how could we actually help you to improve or acquire those technical knowledge or capabilities to move up the maturity level. So this is something that is a sample that what we can recommend you to actually move on. Okay. By the way, any questions so far before we move on? Everybody all good? Okay. Right. So with this, the question will be, so John, okay, we've spoke about the IT-CMF. You introduced that to us. You mentioned that this is actually a recommended way to actually do digital transformation because it's actually a more what we call structured way, right? Then let's look at what we need to do next. Thanks, Ken. So far it's good for you. Huh? Okay, cool. You can follow through. Right. So what's the next thing that we would recommend you to do? So as a summary, we normally recommend to say, please look at the IT-CMS framework if you're undergoing digital transformation. The reason for that is because a lot of people, right, when they talk about digital transformation, right, they only focus on one key area. In one organization I work for, they say, hey, John, we need to go to the cloud. And we tend to forget that, hey, there are other components that could be affected when you go to the cloud that may or may not be considered holistically. So if you look at adopting the IT-CMF framework, you are ensured to say that if you do the assessment, you look at the gap, you say, okay, we're going to the cloud, but it will also affect, say, our budgeting. It will change the way we do operation. It will change the way that we do what we call system development or software development in that sense. So let's get those capability aligned from an IT-CMF framework perspective to make sure that we can actually do this well so that we don't leave any of the key elements unattended. So that's the intention here, right? Now, once you've actually do that, we will say that please also conduct the assessment and make sure that you are aware of the gap, because the gap is actually the one that will let you know that, hey, this is something that we don't do or we don't do so well today. But if we invest in time, invest in people, invest in the process, we can actually improve that over time. And over time, if we do an assessment again, like I said, the next say 12 or 18 months down the road, that rating will change. The maturity will change in that sense. And we need to actually monitor that very closely. Okay. So do consider to look at the IT-CMS as a framework, because like I said, if you just focus on just the cloud, or you just focus on adopting, say, agile, Scrum and all that, right? It's actually just one small area. It is not holistic. You are not looking at it from the business point of view to say that is this what the business want? Because business may not know better. They may say, John, let's go to the cloud. I would say, yeah, great. But are you aware there are pros and cons when going to the cloud? How do we actually address that pros and cons? We need to change the way we support you. We need to change the way that we provision that. We need to change the way we even budget for that, because as you consume, right, you're going to pay more. So there's nothing wrong with that, but just need to make sure that everybody is aligned in that sense. Right. So now that you have actually understand the IT-CMF, so if you're interested to know more, we would recommend you to actually come and attend one of the training course with us, which is called the Digital Transformation Foundation by ITWNet. This is actually internationally certified. We do have a training course that is coming up very soon in October. I encourage you to uh, let us know if you're interested. This training course itself is a 2-day training course for public class in person or virtually 3 days. We can actually run through the whole IT-CMF framework with you in this training course to get you started, because it is actually important for you to understand how to actually adopt the framework, how to actually run it per se, right? So welcome you to actually join us for this training course so we can actually share more. And of course, at the end of it, there is a certification exam. If you sit for it, you will definitely get a digital badge, which is actually shown on the screen. as well as a certificate to say that, hey, you now understand uh, using the IT-CMF framework as a tool to help you to actually undergo that digital transformation. Right. That will end our quick session for today. Is there any questions that I may take, please, on the chat, or anybody want to unmute so that I can actually share some of my thoughts on digital transformation challenges that you may have faced? Any question, please? Thanks, Kelvin. I hope you like the presentation. Like I said, it's a very, very short presentation. We just want to introduce the framework as something to consider. Thanks, Tengku, for the comment as well. I hope you guys like it. Like I said, we will definitely share the deck to you as well. We'll email that to you to help you. Hi, Philip. Hi. Any question, Philip, that I can help with? Okay, seems we don't have any questions per se. Again, we thank you for joining us for this short session. Like I said, it is just an introduction to digital frame transformation because, like I said, we want people to be aware there is a way to do this so that you don't get distracted because everybody will be, or different principles will talk about, hey, let's go to the cloud, let's do this, let's virtualize, let's adopt this, which is great. But what we're saying is you need to actually be aware uh, to actually how do you actually manage that different elements that we talk about in digital transformation. Okay. Thanks, Andrew. Hope you like it. Yeah, Tengku, you are right. We have to do it properly because a lot of time people get distracted, right? Even like migrating to the cloud. A good example in one of the companies that I used to work for, they say, hey, John, let's go to the cloud. And I asked a silly question, I call it. I said, where is our exit strategy? Everybody was like, what do you mean exit strategy? I said, well, what if we don't like AWS? How do we get out from AWS? They said, oh, don't worry, we have Azure. So I said, okay, we have a dual cloud strategy. That's fantastic. Do we a multi-cloud strategy, right? A third one. They said, do we need a third one? I said, well, maybe we should consider GCP, Google Cloud Platform, as a third one in case, right? If Azure, we don't like Azure, we don't like AWS, we have a third choice, right? So those kind of strategy needs to be discussed at the company level, at the organization level, so that you don't get locked down. Unfortunately, a lot of companies have actually signed their life away with either one of them, which is AWS or Azure. Unfortunately, sometimes the finance director will start screaming at me. They say, "Hey, John, what's happening to our cloud? Why is it so expensive?" Then I had to explain to the finance director. I said, look, we agreed that we need to go on demand, right? We agreed that this is what we subscribe, right? Unfortunately, the OPEX will go up. They said, why so much? I said, well, we actually can do a estimation on the calculator, and this is what we need to spend, right? Based on the number of projects that we have on hand, this is actually the amount that we need to factor in. Then I said, oh, I just realized that I said, well, that's something that we need to talk about. We need to make sure that you're aware these are the expenditure that we are spending. So a lot of this stuff, right? I do encourage you guys to really, really think through. So digital transformation is not to say that, oh, I'm going to actually do it. A good example also, a lot of time, some of the customer ask me, John, is it cheaper to do waterfall project or agile? My straightforward answer is waterfall is going to be cheaper. Then I said, but why people are talking about agile, using Scrum? I said, well, you want things to be delivered on demand. You want things to be what we call meeting the customer requirement. Unfortunately, or should I say, fortunately, you need to do it the agile way. But it costs more. I said, yeah, but it also brings more value at the end. So you actually need to look at it holistically, not to say that waterfall is bad or agile is good kind of thing, to see what fits your company requirement. So some company may still use waterfall project management, and I say, hey, it makes sense, it works, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that, but just be aware the things are changing very rapidly. Things are very fluid per se. Even with blockchain, right? So like blockchain, a lot of people say, "Hey, John, we don't use blockchain," but I said you should actually still look at it. It is still maturing as we speak. If you have tons of records, if you want something that is going to be for permanent, blockchain is still the way to go. Unfortunately, the technology is still evolving. It probably has not matured yet. I know a couple of solutions out there are looking at like digital signature, which is quite interesting, which you can preserve the record integrity a little bit more. So yeah, please look at it in that sense. Even another tip that I can share is, do you guys know the difference between the chipset when you go to the cloud? As in, do you choose Intel or AMD chip? No? Yes? Please look at it. Don't use the wizard to actually automatically pick, because they could be an extra cost of 15 to 20%. Let me explain. The Intel chipset is actually very, very good at what we call the CPU intense processing. So if your workload is actually CPU intense processing, you should by default choose the Intel one. Now, if you accidentally choose the AMD one, there will be a price difference. Let me explain. The AMD chipset is actually optimized for what we call the input output. So if you have a workload that requires you to access a database, to write to a database, and keep on accessing certain records, say a data science project per se, right? Typically, we recommend for you to actually choose an AMD chipset. So don't just follow the wizard and then the wizard default to Intel. And guess what? You're spending 15, 20% more. That's something that you need to be conscious of. That's why I said you need to make sure your team acquire the technical knowledge, some of this basic stuff to actually know the difference, instead of depending on the wizard, depending on the automation tool to actually make that decision for your organization, for your team, for your project the right way so you can actually spend correctly. So that's another tip that I wanted to share. So be careful when you go to the cloud in that sense. That small thing, right, could make a difference because I actually make that change and my finance director came back to me and said, John, how come there is a cheaper this month, the bill? I said, what do you mean? Have you seen the bill? I said, yeah, I have. I said, well, it's cheaper. I said, how much? It's about 10, 15%. Did anything change? I said, no, we still have the same number of projects. We still have the same number of people working on the things that you asked for. I said, what happened? I said, well, we instead of using the wizard, we actually chose the right workload. The right CPU type, either Intel versus AMD for the right workload. So the data science guy were not choosing default the Intel one; they were using the AMD one. So that's where the cost saving of 10% comes in. They said, okay, didn't know you guys can do that. I said, yeah, we can actually do that, and we need to be very conscious on every single ringgit, or should I cent, so I say that we spend on those kind of technology, because if not, it all adds up. Or even things like over the weekend, always recommend people that, do you still need to spin up the instance? Is anybody still using it? Because if not, maybe we need to write a script to spin it down. That means to shut down the instance and then to start up again, say Monday morning, say 7 o'clock or even 8 o'clock, because we start work at 8, right? So we'll spin out a little bit early and let's save on the usage over the weekend, right? Or even after hours. So this kind of small, small things, right? You need to look at it to say that, am I really optimizing it? Okay, because if you're managing IT like a business, you will definitely do that, right? Because if you are not going to be in the office, would you still continue to switch on the air condition and the lighting? Obviously not, right? Because it's just like you are running the business. You will say, hang on, John, I think I need to switch off the air condition, the lighting, because nobody's working in the office. So obviously, those kind of things, if you adopt that mindset, it will actually transpire in different areas of how you actually run things, how you actually do things in that matter. That's why I kept saying that you should look at the IT-CMF framework to adopt that mindset to run it like a business, manage the IT budget like a business per se, because there is an investment that's given to us that we need to spend, but we need to get a value out of that. Right. Any more question, guys? Sorry, I'm just giving examples of sort to help you guys to have a better feel of what these digital things that need to look at. Any other questions? Thanks, Lydia. Oh, thanks, Calvin. No worries. I've got plenty more. You just need to ask me more questions. I can share a lot of stuff in terms of digital transformation. Even if you standardize on the printer to the multi-function printers, right? I can actually share with you there are ways that you can save paper. There are ways that you can actually save electricity as well. We can talk a little bit more on that. I'll give you an example. How many of us are still using desktop in your organization? Quite a number, right? How many percentage? Is it still 50%, 70%? If you're still using desktop, I will encourage you the next time as you do a technology changeover, please consider changing it to a laptop. Let me explain why. Very simply, from the power consumption, right? You know that a normal desktop will consume about 400 to 450 watts in terms of power. Now, whereas a laptop, you're looking at 65 to about 110. So that's almost like what, 70% cost saving in terms of electricity consumption. Now imagine you have a contact center, you have a service desk. So I'll give you this real life example. I won't mention the name of the organization that I used to serve that has the situation. There's 150 workstation of service desk agent. They were running 24 by 7. Do you know how much was the electricity bill? It came up to almost 20,000 ringgit per month, average about 20 to 22 lah, that we have to pay the electric company, which is the Naga National. So of course, the service desk manager asked me and said, John, is there a way for us to reduce that consumption? I said, absolutely. If we change from a desktop to a laptop, you already save over 60 to 7% of your power consumption. And yet you still deliver the same function, right? And during COVID, guess what? Everybody was carrying the desktop back home. It's it sounds ridiculous, but unfortunately, that's something that we had to do. But imagine if it was a laptop, it will probably be a little bit easier for you to actually pack that in your bag and then carry it and then make a move. But the electricity consumption, if you think about it, right, from 65 to 110, which is the laptop consumption, versus a 400 to 450 watt consumption, that's a huge difference, right? So that's something that you should be mindful of your electrical bill. Again, don't forget electricity bill, which is the energy consumption, will continue to go up, will get more expensive by the day or by the year in that sense. Now that we are in a situation where sometimes energy is actually a bit of a constraint, you probably don't want to spend so much on that. And like I said, of course, there will be the argument to say that, John, but laptop is slightly more expensive. Yes, it is, but the difference is actually narrowing nowadays between a desktop and a laptop, right? So if you look at that narrowing gap and you look at the energy consumption saved over a long period of time, say 3 years or 5 years, it is probably worth the ROI to consider. Again, of course, the mobility of it. Okay. So yeah, so this is just an example that I've actually seen or I've actually done to help people to say that, okay, here is where we can actually save. Again, these are very, very simple examples and very practical in that sense that you can actually consider. If you do that calculation, right, it's actually quite a fair bit. Same with the lighting, fluorescent light, you change it to LED, instantly you save about 40% consumption. So it's a simple no-brainer. Of course, the ROI will come after a 6 months, 9 month period. You're good, kind of thing. Great. Any more question on the chat that I can actually help you guys with? Sorry, I've been giving different examples of how you guys can save money. Hope that helps. No? Yes? Any other questions that I can help with? So actually, like I said, look at it holistically. I must encourage you to look at things. It's not just one specific initiative to say, do you want to go what we call digital? You need to look at the cost of operation, the cost of investment, and as well as the skill sets of the people, whether the people actually have the right skill sets to deliver that for you. But at the same time, look at the value that your customers are getting. Okay. Right, guys. Any more questions? If not, then I really thank you for your time for today's session. Do reach out to us at Cybiant. We'll be happy to take some of the questions offline if you have any of them in that sense to address any of the concerns that you have or any use case that you might need us to have a dialogue to discuss to see how we can assist you on this journey of digital transformation. Like I said, it's a big topic, but we normally use a framework to actually help you to set that up, help you to actually plan that out, help you to execute that properly in that sense. Okay. If not, again, it's now 3:45 on my clock. I thank you again for your time spent with me for this short webinar, and I hope the examples and whatnot and all those ideas shared are something that are food for thought to help you to get going. Like I said, I will be reachable as well. Let me just give you my email address on the chat. So to drop me a quick note if you need help. Like I said, I'm more than happy to open to spend about some time with you to actually talk about your use case, whether we can actually help you in that sense as well. Okay, guys, thank you again for joining me. I really appreciate your time, and do join us again for next month. We do have another great webinar coming up as well. We will let you know on the topic. Do follow us on LinkedIn. We will share more as well. All right, guys, have a great week ahead, and happy Merdeka on this Wednesday, our 65th birthday for our country as well. Right, thank you, guys. Have a good one.